Welcome back, everyone. This is Dave from Corn Productions with my co-host Stacie, here to talk about the original Quantum Leap, Season 3, Episode 11, Runaway. The episode's description reads as follows. Sam must put up with a bratty older sister and keep the family together while saving his mother, who disappears. The episode was written by Paul Brown, and the episode was directed by Michael Cattleman. This is his one and only directorial stint on the series, but he has 70 acting credits altogether, which includes work on The X-Files, Falling Skies, and Justified. The episode takes place on July 4th, 1964, and originally aired on January 4th, 1991. Before going any further, I'll tell you a couple of things. One, this is not a spoiler-free podcast, so if you haven't watched the episode, I highly recommend you go and check it out, and then come back and give us a listen. Secondly, if you're listening on one of the platforms that this podcast is now available on, please follow, and feel free to check out my YouTube channel, Corn Productions, where additional content can be discovered, both Quantum Leap related and otherwise. If you're already on my YouTube channel, please like, share, and comment, and please subscribe to our channel. Shoutouts this week, the only one really, to Duke of Yorkshire, who recently got to watch the new series because he lives in the UK, and he recently dropped in the UK.
Yes, the first, I believe, 8 episodes are available in the UK now, which is awesome.
Yes, that's good news.
So new people are watching the revival that haven't got a chance to see it yet.
Yep. Like the Mark Davidsons of the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, he happened upon our podcast on Facebook and watched some of our podcasts, so welcome to the channel. Glad to have you. Alright, so, as we just said, the Quantum Leap revival is now available in the UK, so that's good news. That'll definitely help out the new show. But we also have an actor's strike going on.
Yes, in addition to the writer's strike, which was already happening. So, yeah, it's been a hot minute since we've talked Quantum Leap on this channel. So, just to kind of regroup where we are in the world with Quantum Leap, we ourselves have been kind of focusing on another series.
Yep, we've been doing From, which is a show on MGM, which is a show that if you have not checked out, I recommend you go and do so. And basically, some of our Quantum Leap fans found us over there, so that's good news. Like Ashley Wright, for instance. So that, yeah, we've been working on that. I think we're gonna vary up our content. We're gonna be doing some Quantum Leap stuff now and some From content.
Yeah, since both shows are currently on hiatus, and again with the strikes, there might be lots of hiatus now before we get a whole lot of new content.
Let's talk about the strike for a moment.
Okay.
I assume that most people are sympathetic to the writers because they're on the lowest rung of the telephone pole. You know, they don't make very much money, generally speaking, unless you're like, you know, the Aaron Sorkins or, you know, high up there. There are some people here and there who I see like that are not sympathetic to the writers because they, you know, the quality of writing in Hollywood, and I get that. But most of that is because of the studios themselves. It's because of the executives that are pushing reboots, revivals, remakes, and all that. And I would say that most of the quality stuff these days is not happening in movies, it's happening in television.
Well, we are biased to that opinion.
Yeah, because we do tend to cover it, but like, you know, there's lots of great stuff out there. There's, you know, Succession, there's the Quantum Leap, and From, of course, which is very well written stuff. So I think people are mostly sympathetic to the writers. They are less sympathetic to the actors because in their minds they make millions of dollars.
Right. When you think of actors, you think of the biggest names, right? The 1%.
Right. The Arnold Schwarzeneggers. I'm sure he's not.
The majority of people in, you know, SAG-AFTRA are not making lots of money.
Right.
And that's why they're striking. Because, well, specifically, I know one of the biggest issues is about streaming and about residuals. Yeah,
residuals from streaming. And also AI is an issue in both camps.
Right, AI, they want to be able to, like, just hire a background actor for one day, record their likeness with AI, and then just kind of use that forever.
Right.
And this would pretty much eliminate the need for extras and background actors, which is ridiculous.
Oh, yeah, it absolutely is. Like, this needs to be a viable profession for people.
Right.
Well, I mean, it doesn't need to be, But you should definitely support people
mean,
being able to make money and make a living.
If nobody wants to do it, then we don't get content anymore.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's kind of, how any industry works. You
right.
can't alienate the industry without the industry completely collapsing.
Right.
And, I'm not going to pretend to know too much about the details and the ins and outs of the strikes and the contracts. I don't want to speak out of turn on any of that because I'm not, highly versed in it. But I do know enough that, it's not about millionaires asking for more money.
Right, right.
It's definitely, there's a bigger picture
We're
here.
talking about the Reed Prices of the world. Reed Price, who we interviewed on this channel, he's one of our From actors. And, basically he doesn't make a whole lot of money, but he has a passion for this. He has a passion for entertaining and the projects that he does. And, he can work like 24 hours in the span of 2 days on like a scene that lasts like maybe 5-10 minutes.
Less than that.
Right, exactly. So, like these people, they work long hours to provide you entertainment. And there are people who are making money off of their backs.
Right.
Like lots of money. And they deserve to get a piece of the pie, as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I just hope that, in both cases, the writers and the actors, I hope that they can come to amicable terms.
Mm-hmm.
I hope they get everything they're asking for and they don't get bullied out of their strikes.
Right.
I know there's talks of that. Like, there's been things thrown around like, they're not going to give in on the writers until the writers are homeless. Why would you want that as an industry?
I don't know. I've heard that. I'm not sure how true any of that is.
I mean, yeah, again, I'm not going to have, some big, like, important things to say about this because I don't know, but I just hope that it gets resolved favorably and quickly.
Right.
The writers have already been on strike for over 2 months, going on 3 months now. The actors were at like about a week.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's not great news for television.
Yeah.
For next season.
Quantum Leap has some episodes in the bag, the revival.
Approximately half a season's already filmed, and they did that intentionally because they knew the writer's strike was looming, and they got ahead of the writer's strike by doing that, and I have every faith that they will air that half of the season in the fall. Mm-hmm. I don't think we're going to see a lot of scripted shows in the fall. No,
probably not.
And
this will definitely,
that's good news for Quantum Leap because it's going to be one of the only things to watch that's not a game show or reality television or sports.
Right.
Which are, the categories where we will see new content. I saw someone say on Facebook that Fox had uploaded their fall lineup and, it was entirety of talk shows and game shows because that's all they know they're going to be able to provide. And I haven't looked at that myself to see what that looks like. But, it's going to be a different lineup in the fall than we're used to seeing.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think people are going to be relying a lot on streaming and just watching old stuff. Either rewatching things like what we're doing here with Quantum Leap or, catching up on things that they haven't seen yet.
Yep.
And it's not going to be good for cable.
No.
Cable's already, kind of not doing great as a concept. And without having new content, I don't know.
Yeah,
we might see some bigger changes based on this.
It's definitely in everybody's best interest to end this quick and amicably.
Right.
In a way that favors everybody in the long run.
Right.
Do we have anything else to say about that?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think so. Like I said, I just hope that we get some answers, get some news. We're definitely going to see some Quantum Leap. Mm-hmm. We might get half a season and then nothing else for a year.
Right.
That's possible. For From, which is the
that's
other show we
definitely
covered,
to be impacted for sure.
It's completely unknown right now when we're going to get a season 3. It could be years.
Mm-hmm. Which would really suck.
It would. But the hope is that, whenever this gets resolved, things can then move forward in a positive manner. And we don't have these permanent impacts of shows ending too early than they were supposed to. Simply because, things fell apart because there was too long of a pause, which is something we saw, with the last writer's strike.
Right.
A lot of shows just kind of ended that weren't ready to. So I hope that doesn't happen.
Yes, that is the hope. All right, Stacie, your thoughts on this week's episode.
All right, so Runaway. As a kid, I liked this episode. I remember this was, one of the ones I thought fondly of, and probably thinking back, that's because, Sam was a kid, there were other kids in the episode, it was fun to see that as a kid, right? Looking at it now, I feel like the whole storyline's just kind of weird and almost a little cringy at times.
Yeah, this is a middle-of-the-road episode. I liked it as a kid. I don't think much of it now. I think it's okay. But there's definitely... I have a huge problem with the ending of this episode. And honestly, throughout, I'm looking at this... and I'm looking at Hank specifically and saying, do I like this guy at all?
Honestly, I don't think any of the characters in this episode are very likable.
Right.
I think we've got a lot of not great people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like I said, it's just kind of like a weird storyline. Like when you look at it, the story is about a child trying to keep their parent from having an affair.
Right.
Which is weird.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we get to the twist at the end and you think about what the original history was, it's very macabre. It's like, wow, this is horrible that this is what happened. And nobody ever knew or questioned or cared.
And, Al does a terrible job in this episode.
Yeah, and they tell us, he's biased to the situation, and that's brought up. But, yeah, the whole thing, it just feels kind of weird to me.
It does.
So a couple things happen this episode.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned, Sam's a kid. That's one of our firsts and onlys for the show.
Oh, yeah. So, about that.
Okay.
If you think about the mechanics of how Quantum Leap works,
right,
for more than 5 seconds.
So yeah, this definitely is one of those episodes.
It's like, it will give you a gigantic
It's
headache.
one of those episodes
it makes no sense.
Where you can question the mechanics and the whole argument of like whose body and whose like strength and all of this stuff comes up, right?
Right.
And this is one of those episodes where you could argue both sides and at the same time argue none of the sides because it doesn't make sense.
Right. Basically, this show, the original series, takes the stance that it's Sam's body leaping around in time, and that there's a physical aura being projected around.
To make people see the host.
Which is okay if Sam is leaping into someone who's the same height, the same build. It makes no sense when he's leaping into a kid or a chimp, for instance.
Right. So,
like, his sister should be grabbing for his arm and then, like,
not finding it.
Right.
Exactly.
And she's looking at the wrong place at the wrong time all the time. And then...
So, yeah, the argument here, if you're trying to argue, yeah, it's Sam's body, which, is our stance on the show's overall stance, even though they wavered a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sam has his adult strength here. That's shown multiple times throughout the episode, where he's using his adult strength that this very scrawny 13-year-old child, who we see in both the mirror and we see a photograph of him at one point, wouldn't have this adult strength that Sam has. But also, if you, like you said, they're not looking down at him. They should be looking at the middle of his chest. That's where Butchie's eyes should be.
Right. Or, when she wrestles him, she should realize that she's not wrestling a 13-year-old boy.
Right. A big, full-grown man.
40-something-year-old.
Who's actually, I think, even bigger than the father.
Right. Exactly.
Like, taller and broader. And also, Butchie's clothes just fit him fine.
Right. Yeah, the mechanics of this episode make absolutely zero sense.
Yeah. Now, if you compare it to something like, say, Samantha Stormer.
Right.
The first time that Sam leapt into a woman, they chose a very tall, kind of broad, masculine-shaped woman to be that mirror image.
So while that didn't completely make sense either, it made more sense than this does.
It's like they tried to explain, like, where is the roommate looking? The roommate's looking up to Sam. And you can see in the mirror image that makes sense because Samantha was tall and, not this very petite woman.
Right.
But by this point in the series, season 3, we've just completely, given up trying to make any of that make sense. And we're relying entirely on suspension of disbelief, which is hard when you say, you think about it for more than a few seconds.
Right.
It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, Stacie, could you pass the aspirin? Because I think I need that.
I gave it all to Elizabeth Saunders. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Yeah, she definitely needed it that week.
So yeah, I was saying it's the first time Sam's a kid. This is, I think, the youngest character we've ever seen as a leapy across both series.
Right.
Other than maybe Bobo, the chimp.
Right.
The youngest human character. Now, technically, he's 13, so he is a teenager.
Yes.
Sam has been lots of teenagers, but usually older teenagers.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, when I was thinking about that, I realized he's been a female teenager a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, like in the next episode, he's a 16-year-old girl.
Oh, that's right, yes.
Which is 8.5 months.
Yep.
He's a teenage girl in Raped.
Yes.
He's a teenage girl when, I forget the name of the episode, the girl group.
Girl group.
Yeah, the...
the song... Something with song, yeah.
Yes. They're
Song for the South.
He's part of a female teenage, like, Motown girl group.
Mm-hmm.
And, yeah. So, that was... I found interesting to think about that. Some of his youngest characters have all been females.
I hadn't realized that.
So we get that in this episode. That's what it's notable for. When you think of this episode, that's it. Oh, it's the episode where Sam's a kid.
Right.
Like, that's what you take away from this episode in the grand scheme of things. We also get one of our common tropes in this episode, which is there's a character that goes by Al.
Yes. Yes.
Where we get to have these funny moments where Sam's talking to Al and this other character thinks that he's talking to them.
Right.
And I think actually in this episode it's done quite well. I actually enjoyed some of those scenes where the sister, whose name is Alexandra, she goes by Alex. But there's a few times where Sam's talking to Al and she responds, and it's done well here. It's done a lot throughout the series.
That could be really distracting if done badly, but I think they manage it pretty well here.
Yeah,
there's good stuff in this episode.
I do think there's instances of this being used in the series where it's not great, but I think it worked well in this episode. And I don't recall if this was one of the first times they did that.
No, I think there was at least a couple other examples.
There's probably been a couple. Okay.
All right, so you want to get into it?
Let's get into the scene by scene in this episode.
All right. Sam leaps in and finds himself immediately abused by his little sister, Alex, or actually his big sister. He's in the backseat on a trip with his parents in front. The father is played by Sherman Howard, who has credits on Star Trek Voyager, and a turn I most remember him from in the miniseries The Stand, the original 1994 version, not the new one, which is inferior.
Okay.
Did you actually see either one of those?
Not that's coming to my brain. So if I did, it was forgettable for me.
And Sherman Howard plays a very similarly asshole-ish character in The Stand as well. He has 123 acting credits for him, and he's still acting to this day. In fact, I think he might be the only one that really is of the cast in this episode. The mom is played by Sandy Faison. She has 22 credits, the last of which was an episode of Party of Five in 1997, and that was the Matthew Fox-led drama series who would go on to star in Lost, so there's a little Lost connection for this episode. Sam sees himself in the mirror, and he says out loud that he's a kid, which earns him further abuse from his sister, and soda gets spilled in his lap, and credits.
Actually, it was a milkshake.
A milkshake?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. It would have been soda for me.
Now, this car looks super cramped.
Yeah.
I don't want to be on this car trip. That looks like a horrible, horrible time to me.
The pacing of this episode almost makes you feel like you're in this car on this trip, and it's not a trip that I would want to be on.
Yeah.
Sam's sister is played by Amy Foster, who has 28 credits, including a credit for the 2021 reboot of Punky Brewster. I didn't even realize that was a thing, honestly.
Me neither.
Until I saw the credit, I didn't realize that had ever actually happened. I guess I'm not really surprised, but still. There was a 27-year gap in her resume. She, stopped acting in 1994, and then suddenly she's acting again in the Punky Brewster reboot.
Was she in the original series?
Nope, not that I could see.
Oh, okay.
And actually, she might have still been acting, but she might have been, a background extra and just not getting credited.
Yeah. Or theater or something like that.
Very true. We come back from the credits to a Sam narration. He says, in his time leaping around in time, he's dealt with a biker gang, psychotic killers, but never anything as terrifying as a kid sister. Sam's getting abused. Hank is talking about toughening up Butchie for Pop Warner. We immediately get the idea of who Hank is.
Yeah.
And it's not a very flattering image right off the bat. Emma suggests that all the toughening up might kill the kid, and Sam's sister thinks that's a risk that they have to take. Hank ends up throwing something at Sam that he fails to catch. Did you know what he threw at him?
In the car he threw
Yeah,
something
yeah,
at
he
him?
threw something at him and he's like...
I missed that.
No? Okay. He asks, how are you going to expect to be first string with those sissy reflexes? And he's a charming guy, this guy. Really, he is. Emma isn't any more impressed with him than I am. She ends up chastising Hank in response. He just rolls his eyes.
Yeah, the parents are pretty much fighting through the entire episode, and you're kind of left wondering, why are we fighting for this relationship, right?
Well, I mean, I'm going to say this later, but yeah, I don't understand why we should even be rooting for this couple. There's nothing here that suggests that they should even be together.
Right.
And that just gets more and more obvious as the episode goes along.
Yeah, they're kind of like talking about, the feminist movement. Mom is reading Feminine Mystique during this trip, and that comes up multiple times. And it feels like, we're fighting for, like, the mom, to go back to school and do something with her life. And at the same time, it feels like we're really arguing for, parents just to stay together for no reason because they're married.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
It feels like it's giving conflicting information here.
A better version of this episode was the 5th season episode, Liberation.
Yeah, it's very similar in context. But yeah, you can root for that couple.
Right.
Even though the husband's still,
he's stuck in his ways, but he clearly cares about his wife.
1960s, bigoted attitude.
Right.
But on top of that, that's just the way it is. Attitude, he is able to grow and realize maybe that's not the best attitude to have.
Right.
I don't think Hank has that growth.
Right. He does not.
Even though we find out, things kind of turned around for them.
I'm going to have more to say about...
He's not a great guy.
Yeah.
And they aren't good together.
No. I'm going to have more to say about that later, for sure. So, yeah, you mentioned that she's reading the Feminist Mystique.
Feminine Mystique.
Feminine Mystique.
Feminine Mystique, which is a very famous book. I've not read it myself, but...
Do you know the author behind that? I forgot to write that in my notes.
Is it Betty Friedan?
That sounds right. Sam says it's a great book, and it will jumpstart the feminist movement. Emma is surprised he read it because the book just came out.
Well, that he even knew about it,
Right.
I think.
I mean, it would be a little weird for Butchie, the 13-year-old, to have any knowledge of this book whatsoever.
Yeah. And that's another trope that we see a lot is throughout this episode is like, how do you know that? You're a kid. How do you know that? You're a kid.
Right. They hear on the radio that the news reports that President Johnson signed into law prohibiting racial discrimination in the workplace. And Hank declares that everyone in this country deserves a fair shake.
Yeah, so we get this reference to the 1964 Civil Rights Bill. And I found this interesting to note that, I hadn't contemplated this before. It's something that we talk about a lot, talking about the Revival series, is the use of, like, historic footage. And I'm not positive if this was an actual, like, radio broadcast or if they were just reciting something that would have been in the news at the time.
Yeah, I'm not really sure.
But it felt like one of those moments, right, where we're touching on real history to help us figure out where we are in the world.
To basically orient ourselves.
Yeah, and I really like that they're using this historical thing, which I'm assuming this speech actually came out on the 4th of July, 1964. They, I'm assuming they're historically accurate in that presentation.
Right. So a song comes on, and it happens to be Hank and Emma's song. Do you know the song?
I didn't catch the name of that song. They play it again at the end of the episode. It's not a song I'm familiar with.
Right.
Something about being blue, which seems kind of weird that that's their song.
Hey, whatever.
But yeah, they say this was our song, and Emma, the mom, says, we danced to this at our graduation prom, which that in itself confused me, because those are not the same thing.
Right.
I've never heard the term graduation prom before.
I mean, senior prom.
Yeah.
But
graduation prom just sounded really weird to me.
Maybe it's a 1964 thing.
But she tells us, and her kids, I'm assuming for the first time, because they don't seem concerned that Sam doesn't know this, that she was going to go to Northwestern, Dad was going to go play football at Florida State, and Alex asks, so why didn't you go to college, to the mom? And her response is simply, Dad persuaded her not to go.
Which is an early hint, and something that's very easy to pick up on, that there's definitely more to this story.
Right, which we learn later.
The way she says the line specifically, the hesitance and the kind of smile definitely hints at something more in this. And yeah, we do. Let's catch that eventually. All right, so Emma wants to keep listening to the song, but Hank ends up turning it off, which is another thing that bothers Emma, which everything Hank does in this episode bothers Emma. Sam asks how long before they get home, which is a really weird question. How does he even know they're going home?
Right, and they're not now. It's going to be a long summer.
Yeah, Hank says 6,000 miles, and we'll learn later that this is a 9,000 mile trip.
A third of the way through their trip, which actually seems quick considering it's the 4th of July.
Yeah.
And we know at the end of July they're still going to be in California. So, they must be spending more time in some of these West Coast locations than they did getting where they are.
They must.
They just crossed the Wyoming border into Colorado.
Yes,
where they're
that's
at right now.
I forgot to mention that. Sam starts to look nauseous, and Alex, Sam's sister, says he looks like he's about to puke. And Emma corrects her, saying a lady doesn't say puke, she says throw up. And Alex says that too. And this is another attempt for Sam to get out of the car, and this is the second one. The first time he was trying to go to the bathroom.
Yeah, and the dad tells us, no, we're on this really strict schedule.
Right. First of all, that makes you hate Hank even more, but secondly, why exactly is Sam trying to get out of the car? I mean, aside from the fact that he doesn't want to be on the trip, well, usually he'd be trying to talk to Al, but he's not even trying to do that.
He's not there yet. Yeah, the whole go to the bathroom thing, I took that as he wanted to clean up after the food spilled all over him.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
But
what's this whole I'm about to puke thing? Is he about to puke?
I think, yeah. The idea of spending 6,000 miles in the car did not appeal to him. And he'll tell Al later that he went on a very similar trip when he was a kid. This is jogging memories of that.
Right.
I'm guessing that he's realizing right now he gets car sick.
Yep.
Because eventually he tells Al, help me. I need to leave. I need to leave this situation. I can't do this.
Right. So they completely forget about Sam, who's about to puke. Emma ends up grabbing the map. Hank makes fun of her for it, saying that they would be in Chihuahua if she was the navigator. Where exactly is that? Is that even a place?
I think it's in Mexico.
Okay.
Maybe.
All right.
Yeah, I don't know.
Alex laughs, earning a look from her mother, because Alex should be on her mother's side.
Yeah.
Emma comes back with, she may not know how to read a map, but she knows plenty of things about other important things. I don't know how to read a map, and I also, I know some things here and there. But
well, we also grew up in an era where it was less important of a skill to have.
Right. Yeah, I
be able to pick up a road map and navigate across the country. This had to have been really difficult to plan this trip with this level of exactness of what he wants to do, where he wants to be, exactly what time he wants to be everywhere.
Right.
With road maps. That's kind of crazy to me.
Hank doesn't end up responding to this. He announces that they are soon going to be at Wild Bill's. And Alex comments about the various things that Wild Bill's has, including...
Wild Willie's, actually, is the name of this establishment.
You know, it's funny because you did tag sales or...
Flea market
at a Wild Bill's.
Wild Bill's, yeah. So that's probably... It took me... I didn't actually get the name of this place until later in the episode when I see it written. I was like, oh, that's what it was.
Right.
Wild Willie's is what it was called. And we learned that Butchie's been very excited to go there.
Yes.
And that's our next stop on our trip.
And we cut to the cage where Hank is pressuring Sam to go into the cage despite him not wanting to.
Yeah, because Butchie's been talking the entire way across the country about petting a buffalo chimp, and I'm not sure what a buffalo chimp is. They look just like regular chimps to me.
Maybe it's a chimp that lives in Buffalo. I don't know.
Oh, they're not in Buffalo. They're in Colorado.
Well, this is a zoo. Maybe it was imported from Buffalo.
So yeah, the chimps are wearing clothes, and I couldn't help notice that it's an adorable, vintage 90s dress on this little chimp, and I think that dress would be quite valuable.
Yeah? Maybe you should ask for it.
I'm a reseller for anyone who's missed that, so I buy things and sell things, and vintage kids' clothes is one of those niches that I love.
Well, if you want to buy some vintage kids' clothes, you know where to go.
So, Sam ends up kind of pushed into the cage, and all these chimps are around him. This one jumps on his shoulder, and he's kind of freaked out by it.
Right.
Hank takes a picture, a Polaroid, which we get to see then. And, of course, we see the Butchie actor.
Right.
Which I thought that photo was hilarious. And you can see this, horrified look on his face that, Sam gave him.
Yeah.
Because the real Butchie, of course, was looking forward to this. But I did find it distracting. I don't know if you noticed. Like, the position of the chimp in the Polaroid on the little boy was, like, nowhere near the position of what the chimp was on Sam when we saw the photo being taken.
I didn't notice that, but I'm not surprised that you did. Now, this is another instance where you really don't like Hank, because Hank basically bullies Sam into that cage. And Emma isn't very happy with this either. She protests. Hank ends up ignoring her, which is not uncommon for Hank. And basically ends up ordering Sam to go in, saying, hey, he knows what's best for us, and she's being very, very sarcastic. Okay, so eventually... So Al ends up appearing as Sam is being tackled, and this is at the 8-minute and 19-second mark. This is curiously late for him. Sam wants to knock her off, but Al says he needs to be butchy, and he can't. Eventually she gets up and gives one of her villain one-liners, when you least expect it. Expect it. It's not a very good line, but, whatever. She's 14, so I'll give her a break. That she's not exactly Arnold Schwarzenegger in her quips. Anyway, Al tells him that he's 13, and she's the big sister, and it's her job to torment him.
Yep, Alex is 14 and a half, which is a weird thing to point out at that age, but it becomes important to the plot later, is why they're telling us that. Mm-hmm. And like we said before, this is where we learned that they're 3,000 miles into a 9,000-mile trip across the country. Their starting point is Florida, which is where they live. And, like I said, we're now in Colorado. So they still have a lot of trip left.
Yes.
Before they end up back home.
And this is where we realized, or Sam does, that he's already taken this trip as a kid.
Yeah, this is where he's like, I took this trip before. My family packed all 5 of us into a station wagon, and we went across the country, and I hated it.
Right. And he wonders why he's here. Is it here to prevent Butchie from getting noogied to death? And Ziggy does not give odds on that. In fact, Ziggy doesn't give any odds at all in this episode.
Yeah, we don't hear a lot from Ziggy
I'm
specifically,
wondering...
and I find that weird.
Yes. I'm wondering if Al even consulted with Ziggy.
What we do learn that Ziggy knows later, it's like, why did you not know this before?
Right.
It's one of those episodes that the whole, like, misdirect of what are you actually here for just feels weird. It doesn't flow naturally, and it doesn't make sense to me.
Right. I think that comes down to the writing of this episode. I think this is a flawed episode from a writing perspective. Performances are decent, writing not so much. Okay, so Al says that night, after the fireworks finish, Emma runs off, which is a weird statement in itself, given that that's not what happened.
Right. Emma disappears and is never heard from again.
Right.
And no one ever questioned that. No one ever looked for her. There was never an investigation into this. No one could possibly have wondered if something happened to her.
Right.
Yeah, that's pretty much all we're told here is Mom's gonna disappear, and even Sam, at that news, makes the assumption she leaves her family.
Right, and that's the thing, is like, why are you immediately going to that assumption?
Right.
There's 1,000 things that could have happened.
Yeah.
Why are you assuming that she just left the family?
And also later, we'll get other details on, what happens to this family as a result of that.
Yeah.
Why isn't any of that brought up here?
Right.
The only thing we're told here is, Mom leaves tonight.
Right.
Which is, it's weird.
Yes.
It's a weird revelation, and Sam's response to it, I felt, was also just really weird. I
mean, Al, I get to a certain extent. I don't really get why Sam just immediately leaps to this conclusion. Ha! See what I did there? Okay, so they spot Emma hugging a man in the distance, and Al thinks that that's the likely culprit. Sam intervenes, and as it turns out, it's an old school buddy of Emma's and Hank's, Billy McCann. It's been 15 years since they saw each other. Al checks out, saying he's seen this scenario before and he doesn't like it. He begs Sam not to let it happen to the family. Billy ends up introducing Sam to his teenage daughter. The daughter asks Sam what grade he's in, and Sam gives a lame answer about being in between grades because it's the summer.
Yeah, and that's
likely because he doesn't know the answer.
He doesn't know, and he doesn't want to say the wrong information, but nobody seems to question this answer.
Right.
The mom doesn't chime in and say what grade he's going into.
Right, yeah, that's weird in itself. Sam tries to get them to go, but Emma wants to spend time with her old friend. And they play a scene together from Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah, he says, like, how do you know each other? And she goes, we were on the speech team together. And then she starts reciting Romeo and Juliet, which was also really weird that you just automatically jump into this monologue.
Right. It's that would seem like if they were in theater together,
Right.
that would make sense, but not. Yeah.
It was weird.
Right. Yeah.
I'm saying that a lot this episode.
Yeah, because there's just a lot of weird moments, like a
Yeah.
lot of, and like I said, I think it comes down to the writing.
And they're trying to allude that, you know, she has some romantic interest in him.
Well, I mean, this right here, she has more chemistry and more things in common with Billy than she ever does with Hank.
Yeah.
Um,
And we also learn in this scene that Billy's wife Laura passed away
Yes.
some time ago, so he is single.
yes. Ooh. Anyway, Hank comes in to embarrass himself and his son in front of a girl. But Sam wasn't going to get anywhere with that anyway, judging from her reaction to Sam, and not like he was actually trying, because he's not a 13-year-old boy. I wonder how Butchie did here. Do you think he got anywhere?
He was probably too worried about the chimps.
Right, probably. Hank realizes who Emma is talking to, and we get some backstory on him. He hurt himself in freshman year. He was playing college football, and he left school because it wasn't really for him. Hank now owns a factory, which I guess it makes meat.
Yeah, he said when he dropped out of college, he began delivering poultry and now owns his own meat processing factory.
Yes, something
guess.
along those lines. Billy,
Which he's very proud of.
Right,
I mean, that is an accomplishment. You're
Yeah.
a business owner. But yeah, compared to Billy, it's kind of showing us, oh, Hank's just kind of a loser.
right?
You know, he took her to Florida, and I'm not sure where they were actually originally from.
Mm-hmm.
They kept talking about what, Northwestern. That doesn't tell us what state they're from.
Right, right.
But he relocated to Florida with his wife, and they got married. Also, he could like go be this football player, and then didn't.
Right, he got hurt, and then that was the end of his career.
That
basically.
was the end of that, and it just kind of tries to give us this kind of negative connotation here about the path this family took.
Billy, meanwhile, is highly educated, and he's like a PhD or something along those lines.
He
He's
got his
teaching at college.
doctorate. He teaches college, and he name drops like Yale, Cornell, Berkeley. He's taught at all these places, which is very impressive. It also sounds really implausible that you're going to have worked at all of these different Ivies.
I mean, usually if you're like a guy of his stature, you're trying to get tenure at one of these schools.
Right.
So you stay at the school.
So, yeah, Hank picks up on that and
Right.
tries to make it sound really negative. It sounds to me like he can't hold a job. Which,
Right.
I mean, maybe that's true.
Yeah,
If
possibly.
if you're jumping around that much. But
They end up parting ways, but not before Billy gives them his number, I think
like
it was.
his business card.
Okay. So they can possibly visit him during the
he
trip.
invites them to dinner. He says, when are you passing through California? And they give a date. It was like July 20-something. We're going to be in Fresno, or San Francisco, rather. And he's like, well, come join us for dinner. And, Emma's really happy. Sam is trying everything he can do to get this encounter to end, because
Right.
he thinks this is what he has to do, is keep Emma from this man, and he's going to leap and the world's going to be a better place.
Right. Back on the road, Sam and Alex continue to fight like cats and dogs. Emma wants to hang with Billy, but Hank thinks their trip is already packed.
Yeah, he says, we're not going to have time to have dinner with them. Like, who has time to eat dinner?
Right. And Sam interjects and is told to shut up by both of his parents. This is the first time they agree on anything.
Yeah, which, it puts this, it's like, why is he this child trying to prevent what he thinks is going to happen?
Yeah, I'm not sure that Butchie is the best person
But
to
she's
leap
absolutely
into.
not the best person.
I mean, honestly, he's not really here to save their marriage.
He's not. But, like,
So
Ziggy doesn't even know that yet.
Yeah.
Which goes back to the whole debate on, well, who's leaping
Right.
him? It's not Ziggy.
Right.
So the force that is leaping him is sent him to obviously save this woman's life. But as far as they're all concerned at the project, he's here to, keep this woman from having an affair and leaving her family. Why? And, even, like, to save her life, this child is not the best person for you to be.
Honestly, his best bet would be to be Hank.
Right.
Right.
If you're not really here to, like, save a marriage,
Right.
then, yeah, the husband would have made the most sense, because then they wouldn't have fought and she wouldn't have run off.
Right.
And she wouldn't have fallen.
Mhm.
And that would be the end of that.
Right.
Although it wouldn't have fixed the path of their lives into a positive direction, I guess.
No, probably not. I mean, I guess at the end of the day, whatever's leaping Sam around in time wants to fix both the marriage and save this woman's life. I don't understand why they would want to fix this marriage, but whatever.
Yeah. Or that's just a happy accident that, Sam and Al were able to have some positive influence on giving this one a reason to live.
Right. So Al appears and tries to talk to Sam, but Alex is picking up on everything he's saying and thinks that he is talking to her. Yeah,
this is that trope I mentioned earlier. And this was actually one of those, a really good double conversation, I think.
Yeah.
They're in a car.
Right.
So he can't step away to talk. So he's whispering, like, Al, do.
Right.
And the sister's like, you string words together and make sentences?
It's called reading. You never heard of that before? Well, it's because you're stupid. That's why. All right, so Al wants him to lose the piece of paper, the business card, and he gets the card from the mother, Emma specifically, and chucks it out the window and pretends like it's an accident. And the friend of the environment, Al, says to never litter again, but this was just a one-time special event. But it matters not because Billy is on the side of the road, and Sam is arguing against going back to help. And he's like, we got to keep a schedule. He's trying to basically talk in his dad's ear and, using everything he knows about his dad at that point to get him to not go back for Billy, while Emma is arguing the exact opposite, saying, hey, what kind of example is this for the kids? And Sam's like, it's a fine example. Stand on your own 2 feet. But eventually, the father, Hank, is persuaded to go back and help out Billy.
He finally agrees with his wife and is like, you're right, we need to help. And they go back, and Hank fixes the car, pointing out, of course, that Billy is incapable of doing anything mechanical.
Yeah, he helps him out, but he can't resist getting a dig in at the same time.
And Emma, of course, gets a new card from Billy.
Mm-hmm. So all that was for nothing.
Yeah, and then when we get back in the car, they're fighting even worse because now they're an hour off of schedule.
Oh, dear God. The argument escalates. Hank ends up stopping the car, and Emma ends up running off in some random place.
And I think it is noteworthy that during this scene, the song playing on the radio is Runaway.
Oh, cool.
And Hank is even singing along.
That's funny.
Which we hadn't seen him do to any of the previous songs. Like, we get a lot of, 50s, early 60s music playing and throughout this episode. But when Runaway comes on, Hank is singing along.
That's interesting. It's basically his theme song, I guess. Sam asks if they're going to end up going after Emma, and Hank says, she'll be back. And Sam asks, well, what if she isn't? And he gets out of the car and runs after her. And Hank just says nothing and just watches him go, which is kind of interesting, I thought.
So we're in, like, the woods on some random kind of stop along the highway.
This scene is actually pretty good.
Between Sam and Emma have this heart-to-heart conversation.
And Sam is very empathetic here, listening to Emma talk about how she's losing herself, in becoming a parent, that she feels like a non-person, which is actually Sam's words and not hers.
She's unfulfilled. She wants to do more with her life. And so Sam says, you're tired of feeling like a non-person.
Right.
And she picked up on that. She liked that phrase.
And Sam ends up convincing her to attempt to go back to school.
Yeah, it's his idea.
Right.
She just feels unfulfilled and wants to do something.
Right.
And he's kind of the one that puts the nugget in her head, like, why don't you go to college? You wanted to, so do it now.
And she doesn't think that Hank is going to go for it. Sam says, you never know unless you try. And, of course, we immediately cut to Hank shooting the idea down. That was suspenseful for about 2 seconds.
Yeah.
And
it's a very familiar scene. Both parents are fighting.
Right. Sam is trying to get into the argument.
Interjecting a lot, and they just keep telling him to butt out.
And Hank threatens him with military school, which if I were Sam, that wouldn't scare me any, because it's not like he would have to experience that. So they end up arriving at Camp Chipmunk. And once you know it, Billy's there, because of course he is. Sam ends up walking and talking with Al about how it's weird that they keep running into Billy, almost like it was fate. Maybe you can't stop fate. And Al says he has to, that he has to stop Emma from running away with that nozzle. And Sam says it would be easier if Billy were a jerk, but he's not. He's an okay guy.
Yeah, so from what we've seen so far, it seems like maybe this is a good idea for her to be with Billy. And this is where we learned that with the mom out of the picture, Alex gets pregnant in 2 years. Butchie never
And mind
finishes
you,
high school.
she's 14 and a half, so she's like no more than 16 when she gets pregnant.
Which is kind of an good kind of foreshadowing of the next episode of the series, which is about a teenage pregnancy.
Oh, okay. I didn't make that connection. Oh, also, Al ends up saying, well, that Hank is also a good guy, and he earns a look from, like Sam. And he earns a look from me, too, because Hank is a good guy. Al was like, well, it's 1964. Men were different back then. Okay, so if Hank is a decent guy, what does an undecent guy look like?
Yeah.
Just, completely and totally abusive?
Physically abusive.
Punching his wife in the face?
Yeah, he's a good guy
serial
because,
killer?
He's providing for her.
I guess.
He is, but he's a jerk.
Yes, through and through. This is not what a good guy looks like to me.
We also learn, Sam finally asks, well, what happened to Emma in the original history? And all we get is there's no data on that.
Right, and why not?
Right, you guys don't think that's weird? If she ran away with this dude, why is there no data on the life they ended up having together?
Right, so if it would be very easy to disprove that she didn't end up running away from him, because all you'd have to do is look into him.
Right.
And then you would see her.
Right.
So if she's not there, then that's not what happened.
Right.
But
there's no data.
Right,
we don't know.
Yes, Ziggy and Al.
But he must be with she must be with this dude because I mean,
what else could have happened? Yeah, Ziggy's completely asleep at the wheel here, and Al is just he's not thinking about anything other than his biases, and he's very clearly biased.
And that's where it's brought up is Sam points out that Al's taking this personally.
Yeah, because he specifically says, maybe you're right. Maybe she's not any woman that runs off and abandons her family is not worth saving. Which is totally not what Sam is saying in this scene.
Yeah. And, we're reminded here of how Al's mom abandoned their family, and that, was not great for him and his sister.
Now, Al does end up giving his mother a little bit of credit, saying that he understands that his father wasn't there for her. But he can't understand why she would then abandon Al and Trudy at the same time. And I totally get that perspective.
Yeah.
But since that's not what's happening here at all...
It's not what's happening.
And he's not even bothering to look into it beyond his own nose, I don't know. It just doesn't fit.
We're really given... what I can really take out of both of these scenarios, Al's and this family's, is we're being told that men are incapable of raising children.
Yes.
That's the message here, because Al and his sister ended up in an orphanage because Dad couldn't take care of them.
Right, and... Hank's kids, one of them gets pregnant within 2 years, and then the other doesn't finish high school.
Yeah, so he just doesn't know how to father them.
Yeah.
If mom's not there, sorry, everybody's doomed.
Yeah. I mean, maybe there's some truth to that. Who knows?
There is some truth to that, but it seems like very over the top. That's the message that they're giving us.
I guess this show is very anti-father. I don't know.
Yeah.
But then again, they were kind of on the Frank Spontini's side in that episode, so... anyway.
You said the name right.
Did I?
Spontini.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Okay, so Alec ends up sneaking up behind Sam and giving him another wedgie.
Alex, that is.
What did I just say?
Well, you said Al, which is correct, but that could be a little confusing.
All right. Hank and Billy are getting into an argument, and Hank thinks Billy left his hand on his wife's leg a little too long. Sam, by this point, has joined the conversation.
Of course he has.
Right. Billy says that they've all had too much to drink, and maybe they should call it a day. But Hank wants to fight, and Sam tackles his father. Billy says that they aren't in high school anymore. You can't solve everything with a fight. And Hank says, stay away from my wife, and Emma tells him to stay away from her.
Yeah.
And it's funny, Hank doesn't say anything to his son about the fact that he just tackled him.
Yeah, now things got physical.
Right, yeah.
So we've gone from verbal confrontations to physical altercations between everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Is Sam really doing anything to help these people at this point? Because it feels like he's making things a lot worse.
No, he's really just a bystander, really, when it comes down to it at this point. I mean, he tackles his father. I mean... I don't know. What did that accomplish in the long run? All right.
So Emma just kind of goes off at this point. We're not sure where she is, but she's, like you said, she told Hank to stay away from her. She's over this right now.
Right. Oh, yeah. So, yeah, Sam and Hank are now on a hike.
Yeah, they're going for, a run.
And Hank says, "What do you know about women? You're only 13. And he says, "I don't know anything about women, but I know something about Mom." And he says that Hank himself said that everybody deserves a fair chance. Hank was referring to minorities, and Sam says women deserve equal rights. And, it is very human to not see the contradiction.
Right.
Hank doesn't see the contradiction between supporting minorities but not supporting women's rights at the same time.
Because that concept hadn't really come up yet. We were right at the dawn of feminism, and this is a thing that was happening. Feminine Mystique came out, and it started empowering housewives that they could do more with their lives. You can be a wife and a mother and still lead your own life. You can also work. You can, have interests outside of your family. That's okay. Right. And, this is the dawn of that whole awakening. And it is new. And it is, something that a lot of people just couldn't wrap their head around. And that makes sense.
At the same time, Hank is still a jerk.
Exactly.
Like I said, a better version of this character was in Liberation.
Yes.
So it's accidentally revealed here that Emma was pregnant before they got married.
Right. So Hank's saying, "Yeah, I provide for her. What else could she want?" He names all these materialistic things, right, that he provides. He says, "I got her this car, a color television. She doesn't know it yet, but I got her a diamond for our 15th anniversary this month."
Right.
And of course, Sam, is able to do that math and says, "Your 15th anniversary is this month, but Alex is 14 and a half." So this is where, it comes up like, oh, that's why you got married, because she was pregnant. And that's why she didn't go to college.
Yeah, so here's the story here. She was messing around with this athlete guy who was probably attractive, but not necessarily someone that would be her type. She would be more inclined to be with somebody like Billy.
Right, and she was supposed to go to the same college as Billy.
But oops, she got married, and she got pregnant, and then ended up getting stuck with this guy.
Yeah, she got pregnant, so they got married. She followed him to Florida, where he was going to continue his dreams.
Right.
Which didn't turn out the way he planned either. But, yeah, you definitely get the idea that if she hadn't gotten pregnant, she would have ended up with Billy.
Right. So this is an epic romantic story that I've ever heard in my entire life, for sure. Truly worthy of Romeo and Juliet, for instance. It's Shakespeare, really. Okay, so, yeah, this is more evidence that these people don't even belong together. But Emma says that Emma is the only woman he ever loved, and I'm sure that's absolutely true. This is the only time that Hank is even remotely likable in this episode, is this scene. And he's only partially there. Sam says he's going to lose her if he doesn't start listening to what she needs. And Sam convinces him to talk to his wife, but only if Sam beats him back to camp. Which, of course, that's how Hank is going to do it. Spoiler alert, this conversation doesn't go well. Hank tries, but he is really unable to comprehend her point of view.
Right.
And it gets hostile real quick.
What happens is she quotes Sam's whole non-person thing, which Hank doesn't like that. And then she starts quoting the feminine mystique.
Right.
Which upsets him. He literally throws the book into the woods, calls her selfish for wanting more out of her life.
So, yeah, this conversation doesn't go well, and this is more reason not to like Hank, because he tries for like 2 seconds, and then he's
like, "I'll try as long as you say what I want you to say."
Right. So she ends up running off.
I mean, I think he might have been, happy if she said she wanted to own another thing. Right. If what she wanted was something he could just physically give her, then he'd been okay with it.
Maybe buy me a new car. Maybe a bigger car than this, so that we can go on a trip. That's not quite so cramped for the kids.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. All right, so Hank and Sam are talking, and Sam says that they need to go and find Emma.
Yeah, because she's run off.
Yes.
And he's like, "I told you she was going to run away."
Right. And Hank says she's been running away since the 9th grade, that she will be back. And Sam insists that it's not this time. And Hank, at this point, is just deciding to get violent with his son, because he's trying to attack his son.
Yeah,
but Sam
he actually raises his hand to Sam.
So, once again...
great guy.
Yes, right. This is a great guy, Al, for sure. Hank... Okay, so he only ends up not attacking Sam because Sam ends up restraining him.
Yeah. And what Hank's worried about in this is the fireworks are starting in 20 minutes. They got to go set up to watch the fireworks. He doesn't give a crap where his wife is.
Right. And so Sam ends up running off, and he ends up running in front of Billy's car.
Yeah, so he literally, like, was running through the woods and then, like, jumps into the street. Billy and Beth are in the car driving to leave. And he's like, oh, I thought my mom was with you.
Right.
And that whole thing, again, is really weird. Like, how do you know where to find them?
Right.
That you're running through the woods and then stop them in the street.
Right.
Like, it's very spastic, this whole, I gotta run and save her. Like, how do you not know she's sitting in the cabin talking to him? Like, why wouldn't you just walk over there first? Or, like, what's happening right now?
Yeah, I don't get this whole sequence. But Emma, she's not with him. And Billy ends up explaining that she came over, she was really upset, they decided to stay in separate camps.
Yeah, which in itself, again, weird.
Yes.
It's late at night on the 4th of July.
Right, where are they going
He's
exactly?
He's going to leave the campground with his daughter because this lady's upset and is having a fight with her husband.
Right.
Why don't you just agree, like, to stay away from each other?
Right.
Like, he's got to go find a new campground. You're not going to find a new campground at 9 o'clock at night on the 4th of July.
Right.
So, yeah, maybe she is being kind of selfish.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. This is weird. So Al ends up revealing and he ends up appearing
with information
and revealing that he's really bad at his job, and so is Ziggy.
Yeah.
That they didn't do enough research. No kidding. In 1993, a woman's remains were found in
the bottom of a devil's backbone.
Right.
And this is the part that, like, really threw me. The dental records match Emma's.
So they knew.
So how did you not know this already?
Right. So,
So, did you just run the dental records?
Right.
Of this Jane Doe with Emma's? Like, I mean, I guess maybe they could do that.
Right. No, I think basically Al didn't do any research on this whatsoever. He was kind of being lazy today and decided, she ran off and I don't need to look into this anymore. Yeah, Al, you're... I don't know. You should be, like, I don't know, written up for your performance at your job today.
If they had just said, in 93 skeletal remains were found that kind of match her description, that would have been better. But to literally say, the dental records match, it's her.
Right.
Okay, like, that's just awful convenient timing.
Right. So, like I said, you guys are really sucky at your job. Sam realizes how bad everything is. Hank ends up driving up. No idea where he knew how to find Sam at this point.
Yeah, and why is he driving?
Right. Sam convinces him that their mother's life is in danger, and they find her dangling off a cliff. Now, this whole thing, it's well done. I like this scene, sort of. But the context of it basically is that the writers have no idea how to, like, resolve the conflict that they've been setting up for the entire episode. So they just have her fall off a cliff.
Yeah. And it's another example of, like, why would you listen to this person who seems to know things they can't possibly know?
Right, exactly.
Very specifically, he's like, she's at this spot and she's going to die.
Right.
Okay, let's rush there and, like, call out to her. And, especially the sister, Alex, she's like, Mom, where are you? Oh, no, what are we going to do? Like, why are you believing your brother right now?
Right.
Why aren't you upset that your dad's making you go on this goose chase?
Right. Fireworks are about to begin, but we can't watch that because the little brother says that her mother is in some random location and about to die based on nothing.
Right.
As far as she's concerned. Yeah. Very not great setup. But okay, she's dangling off a cliff while the fireworks are going off in the background.
Fireworks going off in the distance.
And I kind of like that, the whole scene taking place with fireworks.
Yeah, it was a good, like visually, it was a great scene.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense how we got there.
Nope. Billy and Hank and everyone are there to rescue her. Billy suggests something, I don't know what, like going to get the ranger.
Yeah, okay, so Sam says, you got a rope. Hank gets a rope, and he starts tying a rope on a tree, and he says, Bill, I need your help.
Right.
And Billy's response was, I'm going to go look for a ranger. Which, yeah, that's great.
So he's not looking for a car, he's looking for a person to come help.
A park ranger.
Yeah, I got
so he's looking for help.
Yeah.
Which, okay, that would be helpful to have help, but literally, like, he said, I need your help. And he's just kind of like, nah, I'm going to leave.
I mean, I think this is just to set up Hank as the hero
it's
and
to tell
Billy
us
as the coward.
Billy's not that great of a guy.
Right.
We thought maybe he's a great guy. He's not a great guy because he's not willing to physically help. And we never see them again.
Right.
Billy and his daughter Beth leave, And that's the end of them.
Right.
So, he didn't get help?
I guess not.
Like, he just left.
He probably got in his car and went to another campground because, he can't be near Emma anymore. I don't know. All right, so...
So Sam says, I'm going to tie the rope around my waist. You can lower me down to get Mom. And they think this is a great idea. And I was saying, is it because Butchie's the lightest?
Right.
That this would make the most sense for him to do this?
But...
He's not?
He's not. He's definitely not. In fact, he might even weigh more than his dad.
Right.
So, I don't know. At this point, I'm thinking maybe Alex is the lightest.
Right. But would she be able to do it? Probably not.
No, probably not, because she wouldn't have Sam's strength.
Yeah, but I feel like we're switching sides on the argument of whose body and strength are where.
Right. So, Sam gets her, and after much ado, successfully ends up pulling her up.
Well, they play it out quite a bit.
Yeah,
so
it does go on for
Sam's
quite some
lowered,
time.
Alex is holding the flashlight, and she just, screams a lot throughout this whole thing. The rope isn't quite long enough. Hank is struggling to give him more rope. And she almost falls, but he catches her hand just in time. And then Hank's pulling them back up. The whole time, I'm like, why don't you ask Alex to help you? I know she can't help a lot, but she could help a little pulling this rope.
Yeah.
Like, he's trying to pull two people up.
Right.
Who weigh more than they should.
Mm-hmm.
The rope is breaking. We can see the rope, one strand of the rope breaks, another strand of the rope breaks, and they're making this really tense scene, maybe they're going to fall to their deaths. I mean, they're not, because Sam is there, and Sam can't fall to his death.
Right.
But they make it to the top just as, the very last strand of the rope is holding them.
Mm-hmm.
It was very close.
Right.
So they gave us
very dramatic.
The super dramatic play out of this scene. And the next scene, we're at a dance.
Yeah, and we get zero, and I mean zero resolution to Hank and Emma. Okay, so Al ends up appearing and telling him, oh yeah, she goes on to get her doctorate, and Hank ends up retiring. But how did Hank get there?
Right. So we're at a dance. It's after the fireworks. It's the same night. Wouldn't they have just kind of went to bed after this? Are you really going to go to the dance?
I'm like, oh, well, after that life and death struggle where we're all exhausted, let's go to a dance.
Let's go to a dance.
That's the first thing I would do.
Hank and Emma dance to their song. He requests the song. I mean, I get it. He's, just almost lost her, so he's feeling, good in this moment. That, he has some appreciation for not wanting to lose her. She has a cast on her leg.
Yeah.
When did that happen?
I don't know. She broke her arm. Broke her leg.
You'd still be in the hospital.
Right. Yeah.
If you went to the hospital after this near-death experience and you got, a whole cast put on, you're not at a dance.
Right. So, and the other thing is, so they don't talk at all. We don't really hear them talk. So it's not like we even get a moment where Hank is like, you know what, I almost lost you. It gave me a new perspective on things.
Yeah, we're just led to, assume that.
Right. We don't get anything. We go...
They go to dance.
Before
and that's
this...
when Al and Sam have their chat.
Right. Before all this took place, Hank was about to, attack his son.
Yeah.
And he's very much against the whole college thing. How did he get from there to the extreme? This reminds me of the episode Let Them Play in the new series. Specifically with Marjorie, the mother, on the one of the Gia's teammates in that episode, where she has an extreme position on the opposition to Gia. And then, without much justification, we have her in the cheering section on Gia.
Right.
And the line to that is just
it's
thin.
Not
it's
explained.
Right, it's not explained. Yeah. It's just too big of a leap to take. And it's the same here. Yeah. Hank has this extreme position.
I get that, yeah.
And I just don't see how he gets to where he gets.
Yeah, but regardless, Al gives us a happily ever after story.
Yes.
Emma went on to college. They even moved to Miami so that she can get her doctorate in speech and drama.
Ooh.
So you mentioned, it sounded more like drama before. Speech and drama. Apparently they're the same thing?
They're not. They're very different. They're very different degrees.
And why did they have to move to Miami for that? That seems way beyond what Hank would have done. He gave up his company?
Right.
At this level while she's still in school? That's weird.
Well, basically, Al ends up saying that he retires and plays golf.
In the present day, he's retired and she's teaching at a university.
Right.
But again, the path to get there doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
No.
That he was just like, oh yeah, let's move to Miami so you can still be in school, get your doctorate. He gave up his company to do that, presumably. So where was the money coming from in the interim?
Right, exactly. So Sam wonders why he hasn't leaped yet, and Ziggy has a theory. Oh, and Ziggy suddenly has theories because he hasn't had one all episode. And it's basically to get revenge on his little sister, or big sister, rather.
The sister.
The sister. He ends up holding her over a well.
Yeah, he picks her up, holds her upside down over a well.
And this is, not long after his mother was dangling off a cliff.
Exactly. I said that. Like, this is a weird choice of what you're going to do. So he basically says, I'll let you down if you promise to stop picking on me. No more wedgies, no more this, no more that. He's trying to help the kid, right? By getting the sister to back off. And she's like, yeah, of course, whatever. And then, she had some respect for Butchie at the end of this scene. But really, like, this should be super traumatizing.
Yes. Well,
your mom almost just, like, died on a cliff, and you're being held upside down over a well.
Right.
Super dangerous and very traumatic, I would think. Like, this is extra. This doesn't, it's not some cute, funny thing between the siblings.
No.
And maybe it could have been a little bit more if we didn't just deal with what we just dealt with.
Right. I don't know. Maybe they should have made this a little less extreme.
Right,
like,
exactly.
Maybe not being held over a well.
Yeah.
Like, where she could die.
And again, we're getting Sam's strength and body size coming into play here because Butchie would not have been able to do that. He's smaller than Alex.
Right.
So it's weird.
Yes. Alex says he's all right for a twerp, and then Sam weeps. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the episode. Like I said, it's okay. There's a lot of problems with this episode, a lot of logic gaps, as we just covered. And yeah, this is not like one of the better, greater. It's not one of the great ones, that's for sure.
Yeah, I don't think so. And we see the exit leap into another mother,
right?
Which is one of the things they would do when the show went on a hiatus. They would show reruns, and we'd get these repeats of old leap outs, which made sense at the time.
Yes.
It was in an era where there isn't streaming, so this means that's the rerun they were airing the next week.
Right.
And so Runaway aired January 4th. The next episode, 8.5 months, didn't air until March 6th. So they took a break. Presumably they aired reruns during that time in its time slot. And I think it was kind of innovative for the time that they're like, oh, let's include the rerun in this episode so that it kind of is going to be seamless, because most people watching this aren't watching every week. They're not following any continuity.
Right.
It's just going to be like, that's the next leap. And if you've seen it already, oh well.
Right.
But in streaming today,
nowadays it's
weird that we keep getting like these random leap outs into episodes we've already seen. And you got to remind yourself there's a reason that they're doing that.
Right.
I kind of wish that, upon syndication, they would have just taken those out.
Right. Yeah, they could have easily, put the next leap into the next episode where Sam is a teenage girl who's pregnant. Right. They easily could have done that.
Yeah. Or just cut it when he leaps. Like, you don't have to show us what happens next, because that's not what happens next.
Right. Exactly.
It feels weird. But that's how the episodes have always been canned. On the DVDs, on streamers. That's just, they've always kept that.
Yep.
It's like part of the canon of the show is that reruns exist.
So, do we have any other thoughts?
No, like you said, it's not a great episode. I definitely feel like I enjoyed this a lot more when I was a child and didn't have adult viewpoints looking at it.
Right. This one definitely suffers upon rewatch as an adult.
Yeah.
And hey, if you guys are looking for entertainment, we have a strike on. So that might eventually mean that there's going to be less content to view. You guys could always check us out. And we're going to have lots of things still going on. I'm not even sure what we're doing next week. We haven't really discussed that yet. Yeah. We could cover the next episode. We could be doing Quantum Leap trivia.
You can expect to see more of the original series episodes coming during the next couple of months as we have gaps to fill.
Right.
We'll continue on with this series. Like I said, 8.5 months is next. Whenever we do that.
Yep.
We are still planning Quantum Leap trivia.
Yes.
Both locally here between the two of us and my husband Adam. I'm looking forward to doing that. So he finally finished the series.
Yes, he did.
Last time we talked about Quantum Leap, we were still like a ways away, I think. We finished the series just recently. So he has seen all of the original series. He hasn't started the new show yet, but he's finished all of the original, so we can now talk about it openly with him. There's no more spoilers to be had.
Yeah, we don't have to talk in code anymore.
So what we're going to do between the three of us is have trivia competitions on each season of the original series. So that's going to be fun, and we will be putting those on YouTube for you guys to watch and follow along with. And I know I've said this a million times, but we are planning trivia with you.
Yes.
Specifically for the new series, possibly for the original series as well. And it just hasn't been organized yet.
Right.
So that's on the docket. It will be coming sometime.
I mean, from the sounds of things, we're going to have plenty of time to do these things. So
yeah, we just got very sidetracked with kind of putting all of our attention on From while that was airing. And then we were planning some great cast interviews with From. We only got one under our belt before the strikes kind of put an end to that, because actors can't give interviews anymore.
Right, yeah, there's a social media ban, or not just social media, but like a ban on promoting material.
Anything that is current or future projects.
Right. And
it doesn't necessarily cover all of the actors on From, because they're not all SAG. A lot of them are Canadian actors.
Yes.
But ACTRA, which is the kind of Canadian equivalent of SAG, is supporting SAG and asking, their members to pick it along with them, and it's just a really gray area.
Yeah.
So we're just kind of going to stay out of it.
Right. Yeah, we're not going to try to push forward or anything like that. So hopefully when that's all resolved, we can get some more interviews in. I'm very happy that we got the Reed Price interview in before the strike happened.
Before the strike happened. Yeah. Like, I think the day before.
Yes. I even brought up the possible strike during that interview.
Yeah, right.
So we would like to hear from you. Your thoughts on the podcast, your thoughts on this episode, any random thoughts that you have.
If you have any suggestions for stuff you want us to do related to either of these shows, or any way you want to get involved, let us know your ideas.
Yeah, Stacie can be reached at.
I can be reached on Twitter and Instagram and Threads at TVN Coupon Talk.
And if you like this video and want to support the channel, there are a number of ways to do so. You can join my Corn Productions Facebook page. You can follow me on Twitter at Corn Productions. You can buy something from the Corn Productions store on Zazzle. You can buy me a coffee, which is a new way to support content creators such as ourselves. And of course, you can like, share, and comment on this video, as well as subscribing to our channel. This is Dave and Stacie from Corn Productions, signing off.